Assalamu alaikum students. How are you all today? I am your teacher, Miss Saima Khurram. In this session, we are going to be beginning your chapter number 5, that is data representation. Now, as the name suggests, we are going to first discuss regarding what is data. Now, data is any information which is raw or let's say organized in some instances, but that needs to be processed, and after processing that can give us some definite information about the particular topic that we were working on. So basically data is a collection of facts and figures, or you can say data is a raw material which will be processed by the computer, and after the processing of it we will get information. Let's say you are having an exams, your teacher is going to take your test, all the subject teachers are going to take the test. Now after the taking of those tests, the individual teacher is going to check your test and is going to give you marks onto those tests. Then those marks will be handed over to your class teacher. Now this marks which is handed over to your class teacher is data. Now your class teacher is going to add the marks and is going to get a total out of it. Then she is going to calculate the percentage of each student, and then she is going to rank each student. Now the ranks and the grades and the percentage that your class teacher has calculated by means of the raw data, that is your subject marks which were given to the class teacher by your subject teachers. This all grades, the ranks, the percentages, this is the meaningful information which is found by working upon the raw data. So data is a collection of facts and information is the organized form of data or the worked upon form of data. Now let us move on to the classification of data. Okay, so let us move on now to the classification of data. That is, as you can see in this chart, that data is first divided into two categories, which is character and numeric. Then after that, character data is further divided into two more categories, which is string and graphical. Then string data is further divided into alphabetic data and alphanumeric data. Let's move on to the numeric data type. Numeric data is further divided into integer and real data, and then real data is further divided into floating point and fixed point data. We are going to cover each of this category individually. So first of all, let's move on to numeric data. Now as the name suggests, numeric, so the data which is represented in the form of numbers is known as numeric data. So that gives us an idea what this numeric data may be consisting of. It obviously will include 0 till 9 digits. Obviously number will include decimal points. Numbers could be negative or positive, so they can have a plus or minus sign, and they could have even the letters E or D. Now the letters E and D are used to signify the exponents. Okay. Now as in the previous chart we've already seen that numeric data was further categorized into integer and real data. We are going to discuss them individually. Now integer data. Now as the word said in the maths in earlier classes also, you must have learned integers are those numbers which does not carry a decimal point, which are whole numbers, which are not represented as fractions. Those numbers are given the name of integers. Okay. Now integers could be positive or negative. That means they can have positive or negative sign, but they will not contain a decimal point. That is what is the identification of an integer data is. Okay. Now here are some examples of integer data as 56, minus 12, and you could also name a lot, minus 102, 34, 29, any of these numbers. Some examples are coming on the screen like 1 and 1, 2, 3, 4, 1234. These are all integers. Basically, they do not contain a decimal point. Then we have real data. Now, real data is a numerical value or numerical data which will, as opposed to integer, which will contain a decimal point. Okay, so integers, the difference between integer and real data is that integer will not have a decimal point, whereas real data will have a decimal point. Now real data is further classified into fixed point data and floating point data. Now fixed point data will have digits from 0 till 9. It will obviously, because it is a type of real data, it will definitely have a decimal point, and numbers can be negative or positive both, so it can have positive or negative signs. Some example of fixed point data are 27.34, minus 956.225, plus 200.5, and you can name even many other examples of your own. Floating point data. Now floating point data will also include numbers from 0 till 9. It will obviously have a decimal point. It can be positive or negative, so positive negative sign may be there, but it will have either a letter D or E. Now this is what distinguish floating data from fixed point data. Now floating point data will have exponents in it. The example that you can see on your screen is 1.602 multiplied by 10 raised to power minus 19. Now we can represent this on the computer as 1.602 e minus 19. Now this e signifies that it is having an exponent. Okay. Now let's move on to the character data. Now character data is categorized into string data and graphical data. Now string data, as on the screen, is it can contain alphabetic data, which as the name suggests will have all alphabets, and string data is further divided into alphanumeric data. As the name suggests, it will also have alphabets as well as numbers. The other type is graphical data. Graphical data, as the name suggests, will have graphics into it. Now we will continue the character data in detail in the next session, inshallah. Till then, Assalamu alaikum.